we had the pleasure of hearing 4 entrepreneurs. Initially, Javier, who told us the story of EcoAlf, and then those 3 amazing folks that shared a little bit of how they see impact first and how they led the journey for impact first entrepreneurship. And now we're hearing the investor perspective, so it's really good to have another investor on stage. And maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about your journey and what led you to Better Ventures.
I would love to do that. So I'm now over 40 years old, but I've always been an optimist. I've always been into nature. I grew up out in the country south of Munich and studied cultures. So at the end of these studies, I actually wanted to join the World Wildlife Fund. And they didn't want me to join. It said 10 years of work experience and in the second line, management consulting. So I thought, okay, maybe it makes sense to become a consultant. You learn a lot, you get a lot of important contacts. And I worked with Bain & Company for 5 years. Also had colleagues in Paris here, which I really liked a lot. And over the course of my life, I accumulated experience in startups and scale-ups. And every 4 months, I was a bit restless because I knew I wanted to make a difference. So I always was a person who wanted to leave a positive footprint on this earth, but I wasn't there yet. So luckily, and that's the end of the story, or the beginning of the Better Ventures stories during Corona, I was building new businesses together with my 2 co-founders called Christoph and Cedric. And Corona hit us really badly. So within just 1 week, we went from 30% growth down to 30% of the revenue base. And that helped us because also the guys suddenly said, ooh, the world is burning and we're building wedding businesses. We're doing something wrong. And that was the beginning of Better Ventures, where we truly said, hey, we can do something about it. Founders are the solution. Founders are the ones who are innovative, they are fast, and we need to accelerate them.
Fantastic. And tell me a bit more about Better Ventures, like the thesis of the fund, if you can share a bit more about it.
Yeah, our fund thesis is that we're not a fund. I have to add that, even so we give venture capital. We're a group of entrepreneurs who all have built or ran businesses before. And we even have data that if you ask a founder at the end of their successful journey, like who of your investors has helped you most and has added most value to your journey, it's sadly not the funds or inactive angels, but it's the ones who've done it before. So we decided to aggregate and create a movement with entrepreneurs who have the experience and who want to actively not only give their capital, but also their experience to the ambitious founders we invest in.
Fantastic. I can totally relate. Working for a fund that is also operator-led, it makes a total difference.
It does, absolutely.
Having gone through the experience of being in a business before helping others in the journey. And from your perspective as a fellow investor, what are the sectors that you're now very excited about, where you see a huge potential for both the impact component and the business component to go hand in hand and build exciting ventures?
Yeah, first of all, I truly believe in the necessity that we need an economy that combines both. Mm-hmm. So there's no way around it. If you're data-driven and if you read the stats, we need to stay within the planetary boundaries of our world and not, I would say, use 1.7 Earths per year as humans. With Better Ventures, we have a very agnostic approach. We invest in multiple industries. That means in people and planet along SDGs. And over the last 3 years, we've made investments mainly in energy, circularity and resources, and health. Altogether, 39 companies we already invested in, and I love every single one of them.
Very exciting. Maybe you can give a few examples of those sectors, including companies from the portfolio that excites you.
Absolutely. I love to discuss them with my sons as well. And we have made one investment in Greenlight, which is a carbon emission binding technology. So from the air, it grabs the CO2 and converts it into a liquid. And it was really funny because I told my son Tom about it, and he said, "Oh, that makes sense. We need to do that." But he then asked, Like, does it fly around or is it installed? And I said, okay, good question. I think it's installed, it is. And beyond that, we invested in biodegradable materials in the healthcare sector, because if you look into hospitals, like, they have to throw away everything. And it's much more fun if you can compost it right away. Then one of my favorite startups from Munich is a, how do you call it, artificial intelligence-driven forest company. So they actually monitor forests, and doing that, they help the foresters to create not only a better forest management, but even carbon credits that are really accurate. So there's no greenwashing anymore in forestation.
Super exciting sectors.
I love all of them.
And maybe you can share with us a little bit as well, what are the sectors that you are not very excited about? Let's say sectors that you feel maybe are a little bit overhyped and receive more attention than they should.
Yeah, I will tell you very bluntly, if the 100th SaaS company doing ESG accounting for big companies is applying for funding, we won't solve our biggest problems just by software, even though I love the business models. And also, like, if you're just doing accounting, like where you stand, you won't make a difference. So I'm also a big fan thinking about impact versus doing the ESG reporting, even though it's also necessary. And there's a lot of money in that, of course.
Yeah, that makes sort of sense. And other areas that you would consider maybe in the next frontier? So let's say sectors that you already identified would have massive impact potential, but haven't yet seen many pitch decks or many companies addressing them, and that you'd love to see more. Maybe there are some folks here in the audience that are attending the event that might be solving for some of those challenges that you found.
I love that question, because in the last 3 years, everything has been about climate tech. But if you look into our planetary boundaries, for example, we have equally critical problems. Like, you are also into food and ag tech, and sad to say that this field lost in attraction, even though it's a huge impact potential, like how we as humans consume food.
100%, yeah. With Mudcake, so the fund that I work at, that's exactly the core of our thesis, is how to address and reshape the food system.
Yeah, and if you combine all the food waste we have yearly, it's the 3rd biggest country in terms of CO2 emissions. So there's a huge lever in that. I think we don't have to look anymore. All the stats are there. I can recommend the Resilience Center from Stockholm. I can recommend Project Drawdown as a source on how to build businesses. And also, last month, we co-created a circularity report with the University of Munich. And it seems that there is more funding available for circularity startups right now than there are startups. So that's definitely a good space to be in right now.
Very exciting. So yeah, food waste, definitely a third of what's produced is missed, is lost. So definitely something that we should address. And more circular economy. We saw a few companies already working with it here today, and it was so inspiring. And apparently there is more capital than there might be solutions. So we should still be looking for those. And for those there working in those challenges, you should look for Tina later to maybe propose your ideas on. And then, let's say, some of those companies will come to you and propose their ideas. As an investor, what are the key criteria that you would be looking at? Because there are usually a few things, right, that drive your selection process. Of course, impact being one, when you are an impact investor. But there's also the team, there is the timing, whether it's right, there is the TAM, so the size of the market. Maybe for you, one of those, might be more important than other, or, particular criteria that you look at.
We can do a deep dive in that. So overall, we have a list of over 60 investment criteria.
Oh, wow.
And some have a must-have to it, and others are nice-to-haves, all in the spaces that you just mentioned. But since we're early-stage investors, the team is most important. Impact is a given, particularly in this space, right? So we have an impact logic and what we look at. And afterwards, like once we say, okay, yes, this team is solving a big problem at the root cause, We're then looking at the team, and the team has multi-dimensions for myself. So firstly, the question is there a driven founder in that? Are they passionate about what they do? I also love the topic diversity. However, I'm not only talking about women and men. So a diverse team for myself is also a team that combines different functional experiences, different age classes, different networks, different backgrounds. And we always try to check, like, what does this business model need to be successful in the market? And does the team already bring that to the table? Now, the fun fact is, you can ask any investor probably in this room, like, what's most important, and they will say team, 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 particularly in the early stage. But then you ask the investors, what do you do about the team or with the team? And often they say, we go for lunch. What we do with Better Ventures, firstly, we have the entrepreneurs who recognize like-minded people. Secondly, we also do personality profiles with the teams. So we have a very data-driven approach. Doesn't mean that it's like a hurdle, but we use this data, we use the profiles to go into a discussion with the team. And I'm shocked that we actually get positive feedback on that, because the teams appreciate that you actually take the time to really get to know them and discuss their strengths, their white spots, how they can improve the setup. And yeah, I'm surprised, but I'm happy that we're doing it, and thereby really get to know the team before we invest.
Amazing. Very in-depth analysis when we're looking at the team. And it's interesting because it does connect back to the discussion that we were having before about how people are fundamentally the ones driving the business. Of course, as investors, we'll be looking mostly at the founding team, but so important as well who you bring on board to the table.
It's also driven by the fact that we're investing that early, so in pre-seed and seed. And usually the angels invest by themselves, so they don't have much time to really look into teams in depth. But since we're already more than 70 angels, we can share this practice and make a way more profound analysis before everyone takes their decision then by themselves.
Super interesting. And maybe you can share a little bit some mistakes that founders make when pitching to you. So, I mean, of course, team is the key component, but when they are presenting, there might be a variety of aspects or topics that sometimes they get wrong. And maybe if you can help some people in the audience as well understand what is important when pitching an investor that can help them for the next fundraising journey.
I think, first of all, I think everyone makes mistakes. So it's rather how we deal with those mistakes, right? Even when pitching. So we've never let anyone down who's made a little mistake, as long as you know how to handle it afterwards. However, what I'm really allergic against is when the team doesn't know their data. So, for example, you have a business model in social dynamics, and you don't know like how many users you have and how active they are. Like, you should really know your KPIs, even if you're early stage, or particularly if you're early stage, to make the right decisions. So know your numbers.
Amazing, yeah. Makes sense in any business, but particularly I think in the impact first world, where you should not only know how are things with your bottom line, but also what is the impact that you're creating.
Exactly.
Your number makes sense, you know, is even this really a big problem that you're addressing? So yeah, of course, coming with the right data is a key component when pitching, and I think in business in general.
And we can measure anything, because often the question is, since we're agnostic and not only focused on one space, it's like, how do you measure your impact? And every startup should be able to account at least for one impact KPI, and there are fantastic frameworks out there already. The Global Impact Investing Network gives us the IRIS catalog where you can look up the KPIs for your startup. So there's a lot of guidance there already. And I'm really sad always when people say, yeah, but we can't measure it yet. Yes, you can. You can build hypotheses, you can build a numbers-driven vision on your impact and the business. So no excuses. No excuses.
Well, I'm 100% on board with you on that one. And I'm curious, maybe, let's say something that other people might not be so on board with. Tell me, what is your unique perspective that most people in the impact space might disagree with?
I lately disagreed with a family office, and they had raised a little fund of 10 million, which is too small for the impact space. And the pitch said, return despite impact.
Oof.
Oof. I mean, I think I'm talking to the wrong audience, but I have to say that we are still in a huge bubble here. So we know that impact equals return, and given the regulatory changes, giving the customer demand, that's the hottest space to be in right now for return as well. And that's also how more classic investors are luckily, because we need a lot of investors, are luckily moving into the space, equal entrepreneurs, like classic entrepreneurs who've built normal startups before are now working in green tech and climate tech, and we need them because they have the experience, and we all need to be fast. But we really have to be aware of the fact that many people out there are still afraid to go into impact investing because they think they can't preserve their capital that way. So they mistake it with philanthropy, and it's not.
I think in this audience, most of us might, I would dare to say that everyone should be already convinced by now that impact and business can absolutely go hand in hand.
Exactly.
But it is always interesting to see that outside of the bubble, there are still people out there who might see it as two opposite possibilities.
I'm afraid there's, at least in Germany, there's still the majority that are critical about that. So talk about the positive examples, talk about the successful founders who are creating wonderful businesses that combine impact with return, because it's so critical to transform our economy.
And so final parting words for the crowd here, like one word of advice, what would that be?
Be proud of yourself and stay sane, because obviously you already discovered that this is a fantastic space to be in. And I know that sometimes it can be frustrating to know numbers and to be scared, like how are we going to solve this? But 200 years ago, no one expected that we can talk to someone in India on a device. So anything is possible, and we have to solve the biggest problems together as a
Thank you very
community.
much. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, as well, for the attention.
Thank you.